ahead and get started then. So just wanted to welcome you all to Facilitating Virtual Circles, and we'll introduce ourselves officially here in a minute, but we are with MTSS Behavior, and we hope that you learn a lot of things today, but also can see how what you probably did in your classroom in a in-person setting, a lot of that still applies to circles in a virtual world. So we're first going to begin with some of the components of MTSS. MTSS aligns resources and supports for students and teachers and staff who deliver instruction, provide multiple levels of support for all learners. MTSS is data-driven decision-making, focused on overall school improvement that is sustainable, produces professional development that is aligned across the school and district settings, and addresses academic, social, emotional, and behavioral development. We have a nice little graphic here, a little concept map that provides a visual of the departments within MTSS. So I'll start with our department first. We're the behavior department, and MTSS Behavior supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks. The two main frameworks used by JCPS are Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, or what you probably know it as PBIS, and Behavior Support System Model, which is aligned with PBIS and restorative practices. In addition, our team supports school personnel in understanding and utilizing classroom management strategies. Another department under MTSS Culture and Climate is the Engagement Department. And their goal is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. They have 6 MTSS toolkits. They were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instruction and practices to increase student engagement, reduce student behaviors, and decrease disproportionality. The third department is MTSS Academic. MTSS Academic supports schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic support that includes differentiation, personalization, and enrichment activities using the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, principles, focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and supports. You can see down here at the bottom the points of contact for each department. So if you click on that, that will just take you directly to their contact information. So here you can see another little graphic to see who supports your zone. Hopefully this is helpful to you to see, who to reach out to. And truly, if you reach out to anybody within your zone, we'll all be able to point you in the right directions. We are technically under Culture and Climate. Dr. Katie DeFerrari is our assistant superintendent. And we have Dr. Naomi Brahim is the department leader, and our behavior supervisor is Sandra Hensel. So now that we've gone over who we are as a department, let's kind of jump into our learning intentions for the day. Our learning intention today is that we will learn how to facilitate a circle and build relationships virtually. Now, I'm assuming that we are all really great at this in a face-to-face setting and in person, but trying to build relationships over a computer, especially when this time we are trying to build relationships with students that we had never met, can kind of seem a little challenging and overwhelming. So we're hoping that, today you can get a few tools that you can use as we begin NTI 2.0. So I know we have a short video here, and I'm not really sure if the sound will work. So if it doesn't work, we have the video linked in the presentation that you're welcome to watch later. But as the video plays, and hopefully it works, in the chat, we're just asking you to list some benefits that you see doing a circle, or that you've experienced doing a circle, whether it was virtually or it was in person. So I'm going to give this a try here. If it doesn't play, just let me know. If you can't hear it, just let me know.
don't believe we can hear. I hear faint audio. Is there any way to maybe turn it up?
I can try. When we practiced it, we were having some issues too, hearing it from another person's end. So let's see.
The good news is I just posted your presentation into the chat. So you have a link to this presentation, guys. It's in the YouTube chat right now.
And Jennifer, it may be the audio on the machine you're on, not within the clip itself. But if that doesn't work, then
that's okay. It's not a long video, so we can watch it another time. Laura, was there anything in the chat that you were seeing of what are some benefits of doing the circles?
No, I didn't see anything. I'd asked if anybody could hear it, and I don't think that they could hear it. So it's a good little clip. If you can go back and watch it at some point, it kind of summarizes really well what it's like to be in a circle. But no, nobody had said anything.
Okay.
Here. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So why should we do circles? Circles help us build our relationships with our students and our staff. And so as we begin NTI 2.0, this is more important than ever, since we aren't going to get to see our kiddos and even our staff members face to face. So figuring out how to still build those relationships when we can't be in the school buildings together is going to be very important. Circles give people a voice. It allows everybody's voice to be heard. Sometimes we are in a classroom and somebody is overtaking the conversation, or you have that student or even the staff member that is the one always answering the questions. So by doing a circle, this gives everybody a chance to be heard. Circles promote emotional well-being. They empower change and growth over time. And after you start doing some circles, you'll realize that some of your most quiet students will begin to open up, and that's that change and growth that we see regularly while doing circles. Circles increase responsibility, and they create a safe space. Now, when we think about circles, a lot of us think of, a lot of our elementary schools do morning meetings, and we think of doing circles just with students. But circles can be and should be done with other teachers, maybe in PLCs, in staff meetings, even in your admin meetings, to build those relationships and that trust amongst your team. So yes, we would always want to be doing them with students, but we can also be doing them with adults. And now, when I was in the classroom, I led several circles, and you always want to begin with having an adult leading it and modeling it, but I got to a point where I was able to have my students lead some circles. So we would start with a big teacher-led circle, and then they would have little breakout circles. So there becomes a point where hopefully your students will be able to run the circles or give you ideas and be more than just a participant, but they can also help create those circles and that community within your classroom or your school.
Okay, so at this point, my name is Josh Conzel. I'm the MTSS Behavior Support for Zone 2. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to get started with how we get started with virtual circles. And usually there's 5 things we want to look for. The very first thing really is establishing our circle norms. Number 2, stating the purpose of the circle. Number 3 is once you've stated that purpose and you've gotten the norms and expectations kind of set and settled, you want to start with some breathing exercises or mindfulness activities, somewhere to get the students or adults engaged and refocused, recentered, and at a place where they can kind of be at one with one another. Number 4, ask a question that every person can answer. Make sure these questions are everyone can answer yes, but also they are directed towards a main topic. You're focused around your expectations and then that purpose of the day. We will give you some examples here shortly on some SEL questions that are great options for the first 6 weeks of school, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. And currently, maybe some great questions to kind of guide those circles to get students re-engaged and re-centered. And then number 5, have a way for each person to answer. So again, leading back to that student voice or just peer voice, having that voice open and an option within each of your circles.
And I'd like to just add that I'll be in the chat with a few other people from the department. So if, as Josh is talking, you all have questions, please go ahead and write your question in, and one of us will be able to answer and support you that way while he's presenting.
Thank you. Jen, can you switch to the next slide?
Can you not see it?
I can see it now. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, they're going back to the first step. So the very first thing you want to do for your virtual circles is, of course, like everything else, is create your expectations or your norms. So the very first thing is you really want to tie, if you can, tie these norms to your school-wide expectations. Your schools should have school-wide expectations ready to roll. If they don't, then you create your virtual norms. But if they do, like for example, here's one that we've worked with a few schools. This is the ROARs, a school-wide expectation, but we've adapted it towards, of course, a virtual circle. So what that looks like, of course, with respect, here you have mute or silence your microphone. In ownership, we talk about the digital citizenship guidelines. So we really want to make sure that we are speaking towards that virtual world, the NTI language, when we're building these expectations and these norms.
And Josh, I just want to throw in there too that once you, if you start the year, with these expectations, tying them back to your school-wide expectations, when we get back into the building one day, that's not something you're necessarily going to have to reteach all over. You'll just have to change it back to the in-person expectations. But they'll be very familiar with what already ROAR stands for and what that actually looks, sounds, and feels like in a setting,
Yeah, and no matter what expectations you use, you're right. I'm making sure that that transition back to the classroom, that brick and mortar, that it is as smooth as possible. So this does help out with that for sure. And if your school doesn't, which majority of yours should, we have helped work with your administrators to build some of those. If they don't have school-wide expectations, then your own, for example, the Google Meet expectations to the right there on this slide are 6 examples that we have. The one that sticks out to me the most and to our team the most is that be engaged. So when we talk about camera usage, that is a huge piece that's really came up since last spring, is we want to make sure that in our use of camera, that the expectation is not that we are forcing students to make sure their camera is on. I know we all want to make sure, we want to see everyone's faces and our kiddos' faces, but sometimes because of equity reasons or students might be self-conscious with what's going on at their home, how they're looking, or maybe we all know we have maybe kids at home and so forth, or we really can't be at the screen all the time. So making sure those students or adults are still engaged, checking in, doing a poll everywhere.com, or doing a poll on, if you're using Zoom, but hopefully we're using Google Meets. If we're doing some form of like a breakout room or grouping where they can still be engaged, but don't have to use that camera. I know as we go, we want to build that. We want to build that culture and that relationship. So hopefully they would have that camera on as we go, but setting that as an expectation right off the bat isn't always the best idea to go forward with. Laura, you wanted to come with the topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on my experience in the classroom, because I was still in the classroom in this spring. And I think I always just welcomed the students to turn on their camera, let them know that, of course, I wanted to see them and that they were welcome to turn that on. But it was always an option. It's never something that I required. And I found that some of the students that were shy in class were of course, the ones that kept their cameras off. But when they did turn it on, it was authentic and genuine. They really wanted to show themselves, and it was a special moment. So I feel like going into the fall, not having maybe the rapport for some teachers and students established yet, that would just be one way to build that rapport with kiddos and make it an even easier transition back into the classroom once we get there.
Definitely, thank you. And on this slide too, and a lot of the slides within this Google slide, we have several resources that are linked. And of course, like Jen was showing you earlier, we have the link to the school-wide expectations that are examples. But also for this camera usage, there's an article that does a great way to describe just the reasons why it's best to, and reasons how to build that culture where students will want to be interactive and will want to use their camera based on, or other than being, I guess, forced to in a way when you have that expectation of having the camera on. So it's something that we really picked up on in the spring when we were seeing those expectations being built. Jen, can I see the screen again?
Yeah. What can you see, Josh?
When you talk, then it pops up on my screen.
Oh.
So now we're good.
Oh. Hold on. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
So making sure that when we have these norms and expectations too, that these are reviewed before we begin. Some of the best examples that we've seen is honestly maybe 5 minutes before your presentation or some time before your presentation. The first slide you have during NCI will be a homepage which has your expectations in the corner and then your guiding question for the day. Having those up and ready so when students are coming together, when they're getting welcomed, when they're entering the chat, when they're entering the room, that's the first thing they see. And then it's an easy transition to kind of welcome and to review those expectations as you go. Make sure, again, being posted. So again, this is, if they're up on your screen first thing, you can talk and redirect them. If you, in the back of your wall, if you want to post them up just like as your normal classroom, but just making somehow, some way that they're visual and that you're referring back to them throughout your lesson or chat. Run to number 2. Oh, and this was an example. Again, this is, again, on our slides. So if you want to access this is a great visual that describes just, again, some of our preconceptions of having the camera on and making that an expectation and reasons why we should just more focus on the engagement than the actual camera usage. And so you can take a look at that. Again, there's even links on that visual. So it's a great other resource to have. So after we created our norms and created these expectations, the second thing we really want to do before creating our virtual circle is really to think about the purpose of what we're guiding this circle for. So really, our circles are proactive. 8% is proactive, and we want to make sure that we are building a purpose for this circle before we even begin. And in the circle, there's usually 3 different focuses we can look at. There's a social emotional purpose, making the connections with one another by sharing a little bit about ourselves. We can do it content purpose-wise, so discussing some challenges to understanding what's happening in the past or what's going to happen in the future. And then there's the behavioral purposes, so virtual norms using a Jamboard for small group. So this is, again, referring back to those expectations and connecting them. Now, we don't always have to use just one of those purposes. We can, as always, a mirror or a merge of 1 or 2. A lot of times I usually always start off with a behavior purpose to kind of guide us throughout the day, connect that to a social emotional, and then end it up with the content because once we're done with the circle, we're leading into a math content or we're going into language arts, whatever topic we're moving into. So it can help us connect our day-to-day life with what's going on personally and I guess professionally, what we're doing in the classroom as well. So it's a good blend of the 3. Once we've had that purpose and we've created that purpose and focus, now then it would be perfect time to then do a breathing exercise or a mindfulness technique. At this point, this is when you really want everyone recentered. You started off with, all right, here's what we're doing, here's expectations of what I see for us, and then let's recenter ourselves. So that way the focus of the rest of the circle is just really on one another, self-awareness, group awareness, and being able to talk openly.
And Josh, our friends from the social emotional department lent us this slide here, I think that's being shown, of some ideas for breathing that are really great.
Can you see the PDF?
Now we
I
can.
just saw it.
Okay, it must take like a few extra seconds, but so yes, there are some examples if you don't have any tools in your toolbox, and how to get your kids centered before a circle. There's a lot going on in the world, so just making sure that they are focused in what you are doing that day just takes a few seconds, and can really bring attention and awareness to your circle and then your lesson.
And again, we have an example there with the Go Noodle, and Go Noodle is always a great place for primary. And there's secondary as well, but it's a great option and great place to kind of get started with some mindfulness or breathing exercises to go forward.
And
go ahead.
They have loads of videos. So if you're, as a teacher, more wanting to just follow along with the students and practicing, the videos will walk you through, and so you don't have to actually lead that part if that's a part where you would rather have more guidance as well. So they're good videos.
Thank you. Hey, Jen, can you pop it back up again?
Yes, it's up on my side.
There's a slight delay between YouTube and the Hangout. That might be what you guys are seeing.
Cool. All right,
Josh.
Gotcha. So the fourth step, then, after we've gone through our breathing technique, everyone recenter, refocus, and able to kind of be open and willing to share out what they feel comfortable with, especially with a lot of the uncertainties in today's world. Now it's looking on the ideas. So again, before you've created the circle, it's a proactive approach. We've pre-planned. We know what our purpose is. We have an idea kind of where that direction of our circle is going to go. So what would benefit us more so is one of the 4 different options we can go and create our circles with. So is it a check-in, check-out? Integrating circles with course content we talked about earlier, or that proactive behavior discussion. Games are always a great choice to have for circle ideas. We like to embed those in there to keep it lighthearted, to keep it ready to what role. But the best thing that I think has been very valuable is the guiding questions that the SEL department has helped build. These are really social emotional questions and topics, but this is for the first 6 weeks of school. If you like to use these are really built for everyone, for JCPS, for anyone really, but really to help guide us and transition us into the virtual classroom. For the first week, they give you a direct topic and then 5 questions or guiding questions, that you can choose and pick from that will help articulate that topic more so and that purpose of your circle. So when you start your lesson, again, having those expectations, norms up there, and then having one or multiple of those questions based on the topic you've chosen up and ready so you can start your circle right off the way. And again, this is linked under the title of this slide and circle ideas, so you can have that for yourself to use. It's a great resource. But again, that helps guide you through what your next and the purpose of your circle would be. Now, with games, there are several different options of games that we'll talk about here shortly. Jennifer, want to go to the next slide? So we'll talk about games here in a little bit, but the very last piece is that student voice again. So ideas for students or sharing for student responses. So how do we have students respond, and how do we give them that voice and that option of opinion?
And Josh, I'm not going to click on all these since there is a slight delay from our presentation and jumping over to YouTube. So if you click on all these links, you'll see examples of different ways that you can have your students share their responses. The very popular right now, the Jamboard. there's an example here that Laura used with her students last year. So you can click here and see that example and how she got her students engaged in that circle. You could use a Google form. This is an example from what Laura used last year as well. And she actually asked, if I'm correct, Laura, you asked the students ahead of time, and then you use that as a talking piece for the circle, the answers and the data that you collected. This is a link to several different little games or brain breaks that you could engage in with your students. But I will go ahead and click on this one. This is a little template that I'm pretty sure came from Klondike Elementary in the spring. And what they did is, for this circle, is the teacher put all their students' names in these boxes, and then they use this little moon. You can use whatever icon you want or is important to your content, and they would move the moon around the circle, or the square in this case, rectangle maybe. And once the moon lands on your name, that's your time to talk. So it gives people some advanced notice when they're going to be called on, and not, a surprise. So this is just a template that we wanted to share with you that could be helpful in organizing your circle. But the other ones I'm not going to click on, just so that, we don't have very much time left. I don't want to take it just clicking. So, but these are all linked to other ideas as well. And last but not least, tips for success. Establishing the norms. Once again, Josh did a really good job talking about that and the importance of tying that back to your school expectations. Making sure people feel comfortable. Once again, the cameras, having a way to participate, but without maybe having the camera on or having to speak. Because I even know some teachers, their camera might not be working right now, or their microphone doesn't sound very clear. So just having some other ways that people, kids and adults, can participate in your circle. If you're doing a check-in circle and there's a concern, make sure you check with that person after the circle, not while everybody else is in the circle at the time. And making sure that as we begin NTI 2.0, our first rounds of circles should be light topics. So what is your favorite food or your song? This will increase participation. Every student will have something to say on that topic, and it'll establish some safety and trust with your students and staff. So start light, and then as time goes on, you can dig a little bit deeper. Once again, we kind of linked all of our different resources here for you. So please jump on to this presentation and kind of click around, and we're here for any questions that you guys have even after the presentation. So please feel free to reach out.